This is an egg timer, one of those crappy little plastic twist ones, and I'm going to turn it into a post-apocalyptic robot bird. Now, for the record, I never said I only do robot heads, so
don't put me in a box. I'll bust right out of it, yo.
It's only sort of a bird anyway. I mean, it started as a bird, and there's a real dumb reason it's a bird at all, and an even dumber reason why it's not quite a bird. I'll tell you all about it right after the bump. Let's go at it now. Heels and glutes. And here we have our crusty old egg timer all ready to go. Stripped it down, grabbed the parts I know that I want from it. I'm using soap dispenser pumps for the hips. And then there comes a time in every builder's life where you're contractually obligated to use an applesauce lid for something. So today is that day. Savor it. And then I've got one of these little ball LED lights that I think they use them, like you put them in balloons to light them up and stuff. But we're going to use it for a bird eyeball. Then I couldn't believe how snugly this little white bottle cap nested inside the applesauce lid. Just look at that. It's like these caps were made for each other. Then I mix up some epoxy clay to make a little bed for the eyeball to rest in. More epoxy clay on the back so it'll sit flush with the egg timer top. Then I've got this idea of having the egg timer sort of open a little bit, kind of hinged, so that we show a little bit of what I like to call a C-3PO belly, you know, like where C-3PO's got all these exposed wires and stuff in his stomach. So while you're watching me piece that together, how about a little backstory on this build? So this episode's inspiration track is called In the City by the band No Warning. It's about feeling trapped and suffocated by overcrowded city life and looking for a way to get out. Anyway, when I think about life in the city, I think of this exchange I once witnessed at a bus stop in downtown Indianapolis. So there were these two people having a dispute. One was this young woman with a pink and blue asymmetric haircut, and she was feeding pigeons. And then there's this scruffy old dude next to her telling her, "You're not supposed to feed them pigeons, you know." And without even looking up, she says, "Stop talking about my birds, sir." Stop talking about my birds, sir. That was 15 years ago, and I've never gotten it out of my head. I say it constantly. I look for ways to fold it into conversation. Like, I'll bring up birds to people completely unsolicited, just hoping they'll say one slightly negative thing so I can hit them with a "Stop talking about my birds, sir." I just can't get it out of my head, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it was that she was furious with this guy and she had this like no-nonsense threat in her voice, but yet she was still polite enough to call him sir. Neither of those two people probably have any memory of that incident, but I'm going to be on my deathbed saying, "Stop talking about my birds, sir." You ever get something stuck in your head like that for no reason? I'm not talking about songs, I mean like events or things people say. Everyone gets songs stuck in their head. Like, I wake up with Cherry Pie by Warrant in my head most mornings. And this is a song that I hate. I hated the video, I hated Janie Lane, I hated everything about that band. And yet, every single morning, she's my cherry pie, cool with the world, such a sweet surprise. Tastes so good, make it pie, sweet cherry pie. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah, that's why we're doing a bird sculpture this episode, because of Warrant's cherry pie. Sweet cherry pie! As I'm wrapping up his C-3PO midriff here, I'm realizing I need to prime and paint his innards before I connect the two halves. I'm trying out this SEM adhesion promoter, as I've quietly had issues with paint adhesion in prior builds despite redonkulous amounts of sanding. I'm also trying this automotive plastic primer. We'll see how it goes. And here it is, all primed and ready to go. And now the legs. So birds' knees bend backwards compared to ours. Scratch that. What looks like a backwards bending knee is actually the bird's ankle, and they just have like really long forefeet. So some bird facts for you, sir. Anyway, I'm using armature wire to prove out the basic shape and structure. I want the leg to actually be one with the branch, and that way I don't have to precariously attach a potentially heavy bird to the branch at the end. I'm being really careful here, measuring the angle, making sure the hips and thighs are connected right, drawing little outlines right on the part so there's no possible way to screw it up. And again, doing all this with an armature wire proof of concept before switching to a heavy-duty welding rod. Because while this may be my first bird sculpture, it ain't my first rodeo, you dig? And I just cut my thumb with welding rod. One moment. It turns out welding rod is really hard to bend. A heat gun softens it a little, but it's mostly locking pliers and a whole lot of swear words. Now continuing to build out the legs with some of the rods from those utility company yard marker flags, and then some foam discs and a few plastic greeblies recovered from inside the egg timer for the knee joints. Then my father-in-law gave me a box of these little brass paper fasteners, so see if we can find a use for those. Beefing the legs up with some Connects rods. Then slotting the hips into the lower body cavity and reinforcing that with some paperclip wire and epoxy glue. And here's where things start to go wrong. Notice, if you will, that I have the leg on backwards. This is easy to see both because the knee is bent the wrong way and the branch rod is pointing towards the would-be viewer instead of the would-be plinth. But I don't notice this. Or more to the point, I do notice it, but my brain just doesn't process it as being an issue. Like, I actually see that the hip is not lining up with the marks that I made earlier, and I decide that the marks are wrong instead of what I'm doing here. It's a problem I've had my whole life that really came into focus during this build. It's some sort of low-level spatial reasoning dyslexia where things just get scrambled when I try to build a bird out of an egg timer. And of course, with the leg, I didn't catch the significance of this mistake until everything was epoxied and completely impossible to undo. So he's not really a bird anymore. He's more of a bug bird thing. But where is it written that a robot bird has to be built like a real bird? Where is it written that this has to be a bird at all? Could be a bug bird. It is a bug bird. Happy little accident, like our Lord and Savior Bob Ross always says. Thanks, Bob. Hallowed be thy name and all that. Now with that behind us, we can get these knees finished up, which will be some seriously arthritic joints given my total inability to apply CA glue with anything even approaching precision. We're almost ready to connect his two body halves, but first we need to paint his interior. So I'm hand painting the rust where I want a little more control over what it looks like, and then using metallic paint for the other parts that I'll later cover with Dirty Down. Now we'll start cramming some wires in there for his C-3PO belly, before covering it all up with a filthy layer of Dirty Down rust. Then after a little bit of fussing, I get his two halves put together and start working on some shoulders for him made out of these busted old earbuds. Then we'll straighten out this paperclip for his arms and thread that with some beads I raided from my daughter's bead bin. And then his little pokey forearm is made out of the tip of a plastic dart. Then we'll get some skin on those bones using the tube from a little spray bottle. Then the other arm we're going to damage up a little bit as per bustedRobut regulation ED 209. Now we're ready to build out the rest of the branch. None of that's going to be load bearing, so I'll use armature wire before covering it all with corrugated plastic. With the branch roughed in, it's time for the part of the build that nearly ended me, the feet. Pretty much every builder warns you that hands and feet are a nightmare and then shows you this like 30 seconds of clean footage where you think, that's not that bad. But you're watching 8 hours of soul-crushing foot finagling condensed down into like the successful 30 seconds of it. But I promise you, this process was bogus. I built talons out of epoxy clay that were way too big. I tore it all off and then rebuilt them using toothpicks. I'm never building anything with feet again. All future birds get club feet. Pretty much gave up on building proper feet and just glued his toes directly to his ankles. I tacked some random greeblies on it and called it a day. Bird feed, man. Stop talking about my birds, sir. Alright, time to get some wings on this little feller. For these, I just kind of eyeball it. I'm trying a bunch of different shapes, like dragonfly, Gundam, kind of angular looking thing, a whole phoenix multi-segment approach I loved for a couple hours and then really decided I hated. So I landed on these rounded layer ones. I use a toothpick to scribe the panel lines and then a mechanical pencil for the rivets. I think these are going to work well, kind of this melding of the robotic and the natural, kind of grim mimicry of nature in a sad robot world. Butterfly wings have these little eye circles on them, so I'm going to put some buttons on there. I tried covering them up with some other little doodads, but I don't know, they just look better without it. It just got too bulky, so I just went with straight buttons. So we've got some tail feathers stacked up like a crow's tail, and I add this little cover piece on top to cover up the roots. So that all comes together, but with everything bunched down around his hips, it kind of looks like he's wearing like a feather skirt. So I fixed that by making the wings a little longer, so now they run the whole length of his body instead of starting at his hips. A few more foam discs for good measure, and then I tack on this gnarly looking leftover from that earbud we disassembled earlier. And then the antenna are acoustic guitar strings on some bead bases. All that's left now is just some last minute greebling on both the bird and the branch, and then we're ready to build his nest. For the nest, I try a couple of different containers before realizing I can just build him an actual nest out of armature and electrical wire. And full respect to actual birds, by the way, this is not as easy as it looks. With the nest complete, we're ready to move on to painting, but first I need to seal the foam. So 1 coat of Coscom Flex Bond, which was a mistake. You really need to do at least 2. It still reads a little foamy under the paint, but we'll make it work by just covering them in rust. Then we'll mask off all that foam and apply our plastic adhesion promoter before priming and base coating the whole thing. Then I want like a World War II bomber shark face thing on him, and then some graffiti that says City on the wing, because this build is inspired by the song In the City by No Warning. Turns out I hate doing graffiti. I watch the tutorials, all this talk about flow and rules, and it just won't sink in. I actually own a book on how to do graffiti, and it's like an encyclopedia, everything you could ever want to know about it. And it is deeply boring to me. You'd think graffiti would be fun to learn, but it's like a real science. It's dull. But that's every skill, right? You grind through the boring part until it becomes fun, but I got other not boring things I want to do, so for now, the graffiti stays subpar. Once I have a couple graffiti designs I can live with, I transfer them to paper that I can cut out and position on the sculpture how I like, and then I mask them off for later. Mixing up some tealish green here and laying some base colors down. Good time to mention the channel's got a Patreon now, so I guess consider this the official announcement. At the moment, it's just me over there posting to literally no one. So if you'd like to support the channel, there's a $3 tier, and the first 5 people who sign up will get bumped up to the $6 tier for free. That gets you access to behind the scenes polls, outtakes, bloopers. I mean, the bloopers alone might be worth it. You're pretty much guaranteed to think less of me after watching them. There's also a Discord for all tiers if you'd like to come hang out with me and other people who feel sorry for me. So yeah, come join the world's saddest Patreon. Right now, it's just me muttering to myself about birds and death metal music, but I promise to act normal if you show up. And I get it, if you don't want to pay to be my friend, just like and subscribe or something. With that out of the way, how about some shoutouts? Shout out to Not That Larry, A Sprawn, Po P Pofk 8755, and _ soap for the constructive AI comments. And for some just generally kind words, a shout out to Wingnut Bert 9685, Reality Mill, and Mini Axe Crafts. Go check out his channel for some dope miniature builds if you haven't already. Shout out to Timus and Brook 4399 for the death metal request. I may have something in mind for that, so stay tuned. And a shout out to MacMac182 for the Bob Ross related comment. Always welcome here. That's all the time we have for shout outs. Keep those comments coming, and I will keep mispronouncing your usernames on the YouTubes. All right, so he's looking very Eastery right now, very pastel, but don't worry, it gets better. That's what I keep telling myself anyway. Pretty much every sculpture I make is an exercise in conquering self-doubt, like at every single step. It's rare that I ever feel good about what I'm working on while I'm doing it. For instance, I think this paint job looks awful, and it has me questioning everything. Who am I? What am I doing here? Does my life have any meaning? Trust the process sounds like such meaningless drivel, but you really do have to trust it, and I don't know. I just try to accept the fact that for whatever reason, 90% of my process involves arguing with myself about how much of a no-talent hack I am. Sorry about that. Got a little dark there for a second. But, you know, it's okay to embrace the darkness sometimes. Sometimes it's that dark perfectionist inner asshole that keeps us going. Or, I don't know, maybe that's a rationalization. Maybe if anyone ever talked to me the way my inner voice talks to me, I'd kick them square in the sack. Maybe I'm in a toxic relationship with myself. Maybe I deserve better than me. Maybe I'm a total dick. What the fuck? Alright, so the masking comes off and it's bird graffiti time. The big ones I pencil in first and then go in with acrylic markers to finish up. So this one it says bird. It's embarrassing. It looks more like Bureau. I'd love to just like cut this out of the video and pretend it didn't happen, but it did. So we'll just surround it with some more garbage tags in the hope that we'll achieve some kind of art trash gestalt here. Then I go and distress it a bit with some of the teal paint, just tapping at it and scraping at it with a paint dip toothpick and an old paintbrush. Then a few more pretty wires before I mask off the rusted parts so I can spray seal the graffiti. Then before any more weathering, I applied this satin finish. I've used a flat matte for it in the last two builds, but this time I'm going to try satin because I want the robot parts to keep a little bit of sheen, like painted metal, and then let the rusty parts read matte. So we'll see how that goes. Then I go in with a sponge, rust on every edge and straight over the graffiti that I hate, anywhere rust would actually pull up on the piece. Then going in with some metallic paint to hit the centers of those rusty bits. Then we'll do a quick noosh wash with brown and black paint just to grime him up a little bit. And then we'll pack just a few more pretty little wires into his C3PO belly. And now we're ready for the dirty down rust layer. Put on them ventilator masks, y'all. Finally, I want these conduit branches to have cables and wires and junk poking out of them, so we'll pack some foam clay in there and just go to town. And then here's an actual rusty brake cable off my wife's bike. So real rust sitting right next to fake rust, and you genuinely can't tell which is which, so that's pretty cool. Then we're finally ready to attach his nest to the branch. A few final little touches to blend that in. And then I want to string a bunch of wire and cable and stuff kind of coming out from the nest wrapped around the branches, so we'll do that. Then I always like to do one last pass with metallics to help sell the rust effect. I often just dry brush like a dark steel, but I've got this Tamiya weathering kit, so we'll give that a shot this time. And then the eyeballs. There are a lot of these. They tend to burn out quickly, so I'm going to paint like a whole nest full of them. And most of them are going to stay like a rusty steel, but I do hit a few with some orange and teal just to give the nest some visual zazz. And then I completely failed to film the part where I actually get him onto the plinth, so just kind of roll with me here. The back is an actual nightmare. You can see the whole crime here. There's one slot where I bent the rod down, and turns out that's the wrong way, surprise. So I carve out a second slot where I had to bend it back up to fix it. And you can see there's like literally staples holding the rod down under the epoxy. It's raw, but it's not going anywhere, so that's good. And then there's this exposed rod up front, and that one was kind of by design. I needed a length of the rod sticking out so that I could get leverage to bend it at that right angle in the back. So I cover that with a little bit of a cardboard tube and then douse it with super glue and baking soda for texture, paint it metal, and rust it all up. It comes out looking like a nice little cylinder of rusty steel, which is exactly what I wanted. Aw, look at his dirty down rust pillow. And then the last piece, the eye just kind of sits on a bit of like blue mounting tack, so I can swap it out whenever I feel like it. Then I fill the nest with his little egg ball eyes. I don't know, is it weird that he lays eggs that are actually his eyeballs? Maybe, but stop asking so many questions. We're done here. Alright, here he is, and then let me show you how his eyeball works. So we can pop out this one here, and grab a new one. Take out the little battery tab, it lights up, and then we can pop that in. How cool is that? Well, I won't lie, this build took a lot out of me. I don't regret trying something different, but it's gonna be a while before I do another bird, I think. The branch logistics, the feet, the importance of things not being put on backwards, it just wasn't fun. As for the piece itself, I tend to judge these things on 2 scales, 1 as a work of art and 2 as a convincing weathered prop. On the first scale as a work of art, I think it could be stronger. Unless you're like right up on it, it's kind of tough to know what it even is. And the shark face just looks like bad clip art to me. I kind of wish I'd worked it a little bit more. On the second scale, like, does it look like a weathered piece of robot junk? I think it's a pretty big success there. I'm kind of shocked at how good it looks. It's very convincing, and I'm perfectly willing to take the win on that and just move on to the next project. So if you didn't care for this one, rest assured, I hated making it twice as much as you hated watching it. And if you did like it, well, let me know. If enough of you did, maybe I'll do another one someday. Now, let's talk about the band that got us into this mess, No Warning. They're a metallic hardcore band from Canada that were active back in the early 2000s and 2010s. And if you don't know the difference between metallic hardcore and metalcore, metallic hardcore is still that neck-veiny East Coast dude screaming you in the face about overcoming adversity. Except the rest of the band is quietly like a little more into Slayer than they are sick of it all. And then metalcore is lame. For me, No Warning is right up there with Downpressor as just absolute top shelf metallic hardcore. I love the riffs, the urgency of the vocals, and the whole pissed off at the world energy they bring to their music. There's just something about really angry people that brings a smile to my face. Go check them out. I think you'll like them. They're aggressive, energetic, and just plain better than 9 out of 10 hardcore bands. Just like you. All right, sit back, soak in these hard-earned glamour shots, and think about all the things you're mad about in life. And next episode, I promise, we'll get back to making robot heads. Until then, keep making it weird. Stop talking about my bird, sir.